Hello, folks, and welcome to our newest episode of the Manufacturing Minute, where we aim to update you on the trends and hot topics shaping the world of manufacturing. I am Megan Metter. I am an assurance and audit partner with Brown Edwards, and I'm the manufacturing and distribution industry leader for our firm. And typically, I'm always the host of these podcasts, but today I am very excited and blessed to have my good friends and colleagues with me today as they chat through retirement plan compliance. Thank you guys so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Megan. Welcome, everyone, to the Brown Edwards Manufacturing Minute podcast. I'm Melissa Stanley, your host for the day, and we continue focusing on issues that matter most to manufacturing companies. Our topic today is retirement plan compliance, focusing on 401k plans and the issues manufacturing employers face as their workplaces grow and evolve. I'm joined today by two experts, Josh Morrison, director in our Richmond office, and Brittany Quinn, partner in our Roanoke office. Thanks to you both for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
Great. To start us off, what types of retirement plans do you most commonly see in manufacturing companies?
Kick us off, Melissa. So the most common plans we see are generally ESOPs, which are employee stock ownership plans. Obviously, not every manufacturing company is ESOP owned. In addition to the ESOPs, there are 401k plans, which often have a profit sharing component. That structure does give manufacturing companies a little bit more flexibility, especially if profitability goes up and down from year to year. Alongside those 401k plans, we also see embedded safe harbor plans. So this is especially useful for closely held businesses where owners and executives want to maximize their own contributions without worrying about the annual testing failures. Because what it does, it usually kicks in a minimum match for every participant in the plan, and it's usually around 3%, give or take. So we see that a lot in a lot of our manufacturing clients.
And I just added that sometimes we still see some defined benefits, some legacy pension plans, but most of those are at this point are frozen, but still require compliance work. So it's important for manufacturers to know that. But for the most part, the focus is on the 401k plans, making sure they're properly designed and administered.
Okay, thank you. Who are the key players responsible for running a 401k plan on a day-to-day basis?
Well, it really starts with the plan sponsor, the employer. They're ultimately responsible for the plan, but you'll see where they will outsource some tasks, such as the trustee and custodian will be the holder of the assets. You'll have other record keepers. They're typically known as third-party administrators or TPAs. Those can also handle compliance testing, Form 5500, the preparation of the plan document. In-house, you'll still have a plan administrator, and typically it's someone who's involved in the HR process or the finance process and work closely with the day-to-day operations of the plan. Now, if the plan is of a specific size, you may be involving a CPA firm to be your plan auditor as well.
And one thing we also see in manufacturing companies is that, payroll, the HR department, the accounting department, they all have their hands in the plan in some form or aspect. So you really need to make sure that the responsibilities for plan compliance are clearly defined, because errors can creep up pretty quickly, especially as it relates to employee eligibility, employee deferrals, automatic escalation of employee deferrals and loan repayments. And, oftentimes, as y'all are aware, manufacturing companies are often dealing with, high turnover, overtime bonuses, collective bargaining agreements that they may have to manage that may have different plan compliance terms. So all these things working together can kind of muddy the waters when it comes to plan compliance. So it's paramount that responsibilities are clearly defined and followed within the company.
Great, thank you. The term fiduciary gets used a lot. Can you all tell us what that actually means?
Yeah, so at its core, being a fiduciary means you're required to act solely in the best interest of plan participants and beneficiaries. So some of the items that this includes, acting prudently. Fiduciaries must possess or hire experts to handle investment and administrative duties. And one of the most paramount things in managing a plan is following the plan document. The plan document is your roadmap. And how the plan is run is all based on how that plan document is outlined. And all of the plan documents should follow ERISA guidelines. And another thing that you as a fiduciary should be doing is monitoring investments and service providers. Again, this is a process that you should document the selection process. You should ensure that decisions are made based on research and what's in the best interest of the plan participants, not just going with one of your high school or college buddies as a service provider, but really truly trying to look out for the best interest of plan participants. And going alongside that is monitoring fees on a regular basis, using benchmarking or whatever it may be to make sure fees are in line with the industry standard. So at its core, it's not just a title, it's actually a legal responsibility. You have to do these things, and you can't just say you don't have the ability to do these things. You must act in the best interest of plan participants at all times.
And when you shift some of these responsibilities, it's important to know there's a big misconception that because you hire vendors and you shift these tasks over to them to perform on the day-to-day, it doesn't mean that it's their responsibility. You can delegate those tasks, but you cannot delegate the accountability of those.
Great points. Follow the plan document and don't delegate accountability. Thank you. What are the main compliance requirements manufacturing companies should be paying attention to?
So there are some big things to pay attention to here, regardless if your plan requires or doesn't require an audit each year. You have some annual compliance testing that you must abide by. Depending on your plan, it will vary, but most likely most plans require ADP and ACP testing. And it can be difficult here for some manufacturers that have highly compensated employees, but the broader workforce may defer much more. So it comes into play with your compliance testing to keep an eye on. Also, you have a Form 5500 filing requirement. This is a tax return that is due each year for the plan itself. You also should maintain the fidelity bond. This is a type of insurance that ERISA requires to protect the plan's assets, and the value of that varies depending on if the plan holds or does not hold company stock. The last requirement here is the potential of an audit. If you exceed the threshold of the participant requirement, this is typically, keep in mind, 100 is the kind of the baseline to always remember, but there is an 80-120 rule that allows some flexibility around the audit requirement.
And another regulatory requirement is to issue participant disclosures to all the participants in the plan. These include things like the summary plan description, summary of material modifications. So if you have a plan document change, make sure your participants are fully aware of these changes and how it might impact them. Fee disclosures is also an important one, how much they're paying on fees, especially as it relates to investments and record keeping. And again, safe harbor notices. We talked about that type of plan earlier. So these do need to be done timely and accurately. And companies do need proof that they are distributed. We as auditors, we often request these documents to ensure that they are meeting the compliance requirements as needed.
Great. What are the most common compliance issues that we see in manufacturing plans?
I'll kick us off on this one. So I think the number one issue we see is late employee deferral deposits. So as we kind of touched on earlier, manufacturing payrolls are pretty complicated. You have overtime, bonuses, you have multiple shifts, and sometimes contributions aren't deposited as quickly as they should be. So the Department of Labor has guidelines that suggest that employee deferrals must be segregated from the company's assets and put into the plan as soon as administratively possible. Feasible is the terminology they use. Now, there is a 7 business day safe harbor for employee contributions to be deposited into the plan within 7 days if you have fewer than 100 participants. Now, if you have more than 100 participants, there is no such safe harbor, so you cannot rely on that. But typically, you should be able to get assets out of your company and into the plan in earlier than 7 business days. So you ultimately need to determine what's the earliest date you can segregate deferrals from your general assets. Typically, what we see for most of our clients is in the 2 to 3 business day range. And you need to make sure you're consistently doing that, because if the DOL IRS sees that you're doing that multiple times and then you have a few that fall outside of that range, they might consider those late remittances. And what happens there is you have to potentially get into paying lost earnings for these participants, and it could just become a little bit of a messy process.
And I'll add there that if the listeners are looking for any more information on those late contributions and how to correct or how to determine if they have this issue, we have a BE Benefits Buzz podcast that we have talked on this topic at length. So feel free to search for that, subscribe to that podcast as well for more information. But to add some more common pitfalls here, there are auto-enrollment issues. If your plan has auto-enrollment, we tend to see issues surrounding the enrollment about people meeting the eligibility requirements, some issues with high turnover or seasonal labor, auto-escalation. Most plans that have auto-enrollment tend to have auto escalation procedures as well. And that can cause a bit of administrative burden if it's difficult to keep up with. I'd say kind of that is also maybe potentially number one, if not late contributions, is the definition of compensation. This is one that we see issues a lot with, and it's not intentional. These are issues that come up because it's just a misinterpretation of the plan, or a payroll code is not set up properly. So definition of compensation is definitely next in line with top errors. But again, like I said, most of these are not intentional. It's usually a breakdown in the process or communication.
What best practices separate well-run manufacturing retirement plans from the rest?
I'd say that some of the best plans that our clients have a very strong retirement plan committee. They meet regularly. Maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's semi-annually, but they discuss the plan. They discuss the investment options. They discuss not just the investment options, but how to gain more traction in the plan, how to encourage participation. They have really good vendors that they work with that are regularly meeting with their plan participants to discuss. And during these meetings, they're also documenting what's going on, what's being said, and really going through their due diligence as plan trustees. And like I mentioned before, some of these plans have the best advisors and TPAs you could hope for, and they're all looking out for the plan in its best interest possible. And I will say there's oftentimes some lacking internal controls on some smaller plans, but some bigger plans and ones that are well run have very robust internal controls. Their segregation of duties are very strong, and they put a lot of thought into doing these things, and they have them well documented. So it makes our job as auditors a little bit easier when we go to a client and they just hand us over an internal control narrative that kind of explains their processes and how they make sure everything's on the up and up on the internal control side.
Also, regular training, fee benchmarking, and regular plan document reviews go a long way to avoid major issues.
If a company discovers an error, what should they do?
Don't panic. That's the first thing. Errors happen. So don't panic. There's ways around fixing things. And the next thing is probably don't ignore it. Don't push it off. Address it immediately. The IRS Department of Labor has correction programs out there designed specifically for this. And recently, the Secure 2.0 Act expanded the ability for sponsors to self-correct certain operational errors without penalty. And as long as they're not egregious or related to any misuse of assets, you can utilize these self-correction programs.
Just like anything, the earlier you catch an error and correct it, it's usually simpler and less expensive that way. So that's why regular monitoring is pretty important. So one option we offer some of our clients that may not meet the audit requirement threshold now, but may in the future, is to consider what we call an agreed upon procedures engagement. So this is where we can come in and we have a list of procedures that we can come together with and figure out what we can do. We go through internal controls. We might go through employee deferral change elections, how those are handled in the payroll system, how that's updated. We might go through your definition of compensation to kind of get a better understanding on that and how it relates to the plan document and if it's being managed appropriately, and kind of talk through those things with you and test them and see where errors could be identified on the forefront, instead of waiting until you get to an audit and you identify errors that could creep up and cause major compliance issues in the future.
Great advice. Being proactive. I like it. Any final advice for manufacturing owners, CFOs, or human resource leaders?
Just like anything, I would just encourage you to be proactive rather than reactive. Try to get these things in your forefront of your mind, internal controls, making sure you have an established retirement plan committee, and regular oversight and documentation are what keeps plans compliant.
And remember, your retirement plan isn't a compliance obligation. It's a powerful tool to attract and retain talent, especially in this very competitive environment.
Well, this was great advice. Thank you both for joining us today. I really appreciate it. For listeners who have questions about their retirement plan or want help evaluating their current structure, please reach out to Brown Edwards. We're happy to help you. Thanks for listening to the Manufacturing Minute podcast. We'll see you next time.